Age is just a number, and that's probably why I've stopped counting mine for myself. But when it comes to MMOs, it's a bit of a bragging right. When you've been around for a long time, you still have an active player base, and you're still creating content. So this list is going to be 5 MMOs that have kind of beaten the odds and continued where so many MMOs have failed over the years. The graveyard of MMOs is vast. Some of them are beloved titles like Vanguard. Some of them you probably don't even know the name of. Or if you do, you probably didn't play it for very long because it only lasts for 79 days, APB. It's a really interesting thing to see that why these games lasted this long. You know, and some of it I think might be timing. Some of it could just be iterations on formulas. But we want to go into these MMOs, see what those MMOs were about and what they're like today in 2022. What are they up to? And maybe if you haven't played any of these MMOs, this might be a good time to give them a shot because they've at least had the staying power for this long. Okay, so I know that with only 5 games on the list and the most recent one being made in 2004, I definitely forgot one of your favorite games. So let me give you your template for the comment you can leave down below. Why didn't you include? And so you can go ahead and type that now. Like in the comment section, just go ahead and start typing that, get it ready, get primed, sit back, relax, watch the video, and then by the end of it, all you have to do is type in the name of the game and hit enter. I mean, you can put some angry face emojis in there like that just to really get the point across. Like go ahead and do that now too, because you can always put the name of the game before those. You know, and then just hit enter as soon as the video is done. And I'll totally read it. Okay, I will read it. I read all your comments. I try to respond to them too. So the newest game on our list, and by far the largest and most successful, at least in terms of subscription numbers, if not content or nostalgia. World of Warcraft changed the MMO genre. Love it or hate it, it did. For over a decade, MMOs were releasing with the intent to either emulate or surpass Azeroth. For the most part, they failed. In fact, it's only in recent years that the game's supremacy has been thoroughly challenged in North America by none other than Final Fantasy XIV, which does hold several similarities to World of Warcraft. Warcraft is an interesting game because, like many on the list, it has gone through periods of growth. The game that launched in 2004 is not the game that exists today, although I guess it technically does since we now have WoW Classic, but that just convolutes the point and we'll get to that in a minute. World of Warcraft took the Everquest formula of PvE, added in some low stakes but engaging PvP, dropped the support class in favor of a Holy Trinity, and they were off to the races. Warcraft did a lot of things right early on, like choosing an art style that could weather technological advancements while not requiring beefy computers, opening up the number of people that could potentially play the game. This was a direct shift away from the competition in North America that was at the time doing something completely different, which is Everquest 2. And when I say completely different, I don't mean in style of play. Everquest 2 and World of Warcraft were very similar in their style of play, but Everquest 2 tried to push graphics. I'm not saying that's the reason why World of Warcraft won. There's a lot of issues with Everquest 2. There was still issues with Warcraft, but that was one big motivating factor. You could play World of Warcraft on a potato. You needed a beefy computer to play Everquest 2. But how is World of Warcraft doing now? From a gameplay standpoint, WoW Classic has moved on to the second expansion, one that is beloved by many and was actually my entry into Warcraft as it launched shortly after I started playing the first time, Wrath of the Lich King. On the retail side, the most recent expansion was, well, I mean, critics liked it. That's something, right? That's totally how we judge games. But they're not out for the count. A new expansion was announced, complete with a new playable race, the Drakthir, which will be class limited to the Evoker. It's an interesting new experiment that, okay, well, to me, it just seems lazy. It seems really lazy to be like, hey, here's a new class and here's a new race. They can only be this class and race, and that is it, and there's no crossover. But at least it's something, right? I understand how difficult it is to, in a game that is almost 20 years old, add in a new class and race. The balancing thing is an issue. It will continue to be an issue, and it goes into a bigger and bigger issue the longer the game has been around. But still, really? Now, subscription numbers are always iffy, and it's unclear whether Final Fantasy XIV has surpassed Warcraft finally, 18 years after it launched. But what can't really be contested is that this game still dominates the MMO space, just perhaps not with the same sway it once had. The WoW killer MMO development phase may be behind us, and I at least think that's a positive development for the genre. So we're going to move on from World of Warcraft to an MMO that actually launched first in Japan in 2002. Final Fantasy, A Realm Reborn. This is one of the coolest MMO stories out there, and one I wanted to cover for a while. You know, it's really... Wait, what do you... Oh, it's not that Final Fantasy? You mean there was another one? One that predated Final Fantasy XIV by over a decade? One that is beloved by a strong group of passionate fans who still adore the game to this day? I think there's something special about games that can continue on when a sequel of the same IP does well. It shows that that game has something special and unique to offer. Final Fantasy XI was and is a social game. A quick browse of Reddit about what makes the game special comes up with many responses referring to the importance of grouping in different job roles, as well as the ability to level multiple jobs. It's not on the fly like in Final Fantasy XIV, requiring to use the Mog House or the Nomad Moogle, but it's still something that was a major deviation from the game at the time that was the most similar, Everquest, and the one that came after, World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy XI is a game of challenge and being social, which was a hallmark of these early MMOs, and it maintains that to this day. You know, I actually remember booting up Final Fantasy XI back when it launched and sadly finding my PC couldn't handle it. Not to mention being overwhelmed by the UI and the world and everything about it, because I was not really a huge Final Fantasy fan at the time. But it's a game I might want to check out just to experience some at some point, because I really enjoy Final Fantasy XIV, and of course I loved EverQuest. So it might be worth just taking a look. So how is Final Fantasy XI doing now? Well, not as well as Final Fantasy XIV, but that's to be expected. They just celebrated their 20th anniversary. New story content continues to be added to the game, and they're about to host an AMA on the 23rd of May, which after I record this, but also by the time you're watching this, it will have happened. But you know, YouTube is weird, editing is weird, time is an illusion. I don't know. I didn't mean to get like, look, this is a video about MMOs. I'm not here to get existential or any shit like that, okay? There was an AMA, but let's move from Final Fantasy and chocobos and all that to another game that was in the more traditional fantasy. In 2001, Runescape launched. Now, Runescape was an interesting game because it launched 4 years after Ultima Online. And I remember thinking it somehow looked like a lower graphic version of its predecessor. The most incredible part of this game, though, wasn't the graphics. It was the fact that it was a fucking browser game. You know, like all those Flash animations you played on Newgrounds? Please say you remember playing Flash games on Newgrounds. It's not just me, right? Like, some of you are my age, but the game was a wide-ranging medieval experience. Quests, PvP, crafting, PvE. RuneScape was ambitious, but the story of this game, at least to me, is not what it was, but what it has become. RuneScape today is a matured game. In fact, it's even broken into 2 separate clients, RuneScape and old school RuneScape. Like the early iteration, which allowed browser play, these clients are more accessible than many MMOs today, with cross-platform play enabled across mobile and PCs. To quote the official RuneScape video, 21 years of change, the history of RuneScape. 21 years of change has made RuneScape nearly unrecognizable to what it was in 2001. In many ways, for the better. So if you're interested in this ever-evolving game that perhaps has changed the most out of any game on this list, go take a look at RuneScape, try it out, test both clients, see if you enjoy it, and maybe play it on your commute to work. Oh, you knew this one was gonna be on the list. It had to be on the list, right? Like, it is perhaps the poster child for this list. What can I say about Everquest? Perhaps the game on this list I researched least because I lived through so much of it. Everquest has been around since 1999, and out of every game on the list, it's been perhaps the most actively developed. In the 23 years since its launch, there have been 28 expansions. 28 fucking expansions, from Ruins of Canark to Terror of Luckland, which launched in 2021, and a 29th expansion planned for 2022, from a max level of 50 to a max level of 120. Everquest has gone through a lot. The top dog, especially for PvE focused MMOs before it was smashed by the success of World of Warcraft, Everquest has chugged along, providing a home for adventurers seeking challenge and social cooperative gameplay. Class roles are at the heart of the game, and raiding and high-end grouping are the dominant forms of content for this old gem. If you're new to this channel, you may not know that EQ is my all-time favorite game, but now you do, and there's a lot of videos about the game, so if you're interested, you have a lot of watching you can do. It was the game that convinced me to quit Ultima Online, my first MMO, and it was the one that pulled me back from World of Warcraft when I went to have some fun with that game for a while. But how is Everquest doing now? Well, Everquest continues to put up strong subscription numbers as evidenced by earning reports. What initially looked like a bleak future is starting to look like a bit brighter under its current stewardship. There was a time when it was owned by Columbus Nova that the feelings of much of the player base was that it would soon be sold off as an IP or put in maintenance mode. While that still might happen, EG7 does appear committed at the moment. New progression servers and new expansions are launching each year with regularity, and we got the first roadmaps for the game with the promise of a UI revamp in 2023. The game also moved from the 32-bit client to the 64-bit client this year. Safe to say, Everquest is still going strong all these years later. If not growing, it's at least maintaining. Now, our oldest game on the list is an interesting one to me, because it's a game that has really surprised me that it's still around, because this game came out in 1997, and it's gone through a lot of different developers. Corpor and Vosflam. Those were words you learned to fear, and sound effects that were shortly followed by... In 1997, the single-player universe of Ultima expanded into Ultima Online. A bit of a social and economic experiment, Ultima Online expanded on what was possible in gaming by creating a persistent world that captured the attentions of hundreds of thousands of players over the years. This was back when the idea of 250,000 people playing an MMO was an incredible achievement and far exceeded their expectations. This would of course later be dwarfed by the success of games like Everquest and the behemoth that is World of Warcraft, but no one at the time would have called Ultima Online anything but a success. The game had a hardcore PvP edge to it that was blunted in subsequent years. It also heavily relied on a player economy with basics available in the cities, but the best armor required crafters and miners. Good furniture needed carpenters. Regions for your spells or runes to travel were sold in droves on player vendors, or in cities at the bank. And that doesn't even touch on rare items, unique items like the blessed black dye tubs and potted plants. As rarity of these items increased, so did the value, creating their own economy. A game within the game. Rare hunting was a hobby. Dragon taming was a marketable skill. Bards with Provoke pissed off everyone, until they were eventually nerfed. And that made me quit the game, and mages were ridiculously OP. Anyone else remember the first time you took a silver halberd to the Lich Room? Ah, memories. But how is Ultima Online doing now? Well, Ultima Online is still going. 2007 saw the release of Ultima Online Kingdom Reborn, which allowed for an optional new game engine to be used with upgraded visuals. It's moved from Origin, which stewarded it from 1995 to 2004, to EA in 2004 to 2006, Mythic Entertainment from 2006 to 2014, and is now currently under Broadsword, 2014 to the present. In 2018, Ultima Online added a free-to-play version of the game, essentially allowing access with restrictions that could be removed with the traditional subscription. In September of 2020, Ultima Online New Legacy was announced, which really sounds a lot like a mix between a fresh start and a progression server, or shard in the case of Ultima Online. But there's been few updates since. The last update came with a stream on June 30th, 2021, which I've linked down below if you're interested in the minutia. My name is Redbeard Flynn. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to know more about some of the crazy things that have happened in MMOs over the years, like the series of events that led to the assassination of Lord British in Ultima Online, or throwing up your hands at the waking of the sleeper on Ralos Zek PvP server, Take a look at this video over here. Fancy something a little shorter? Well, what about the shortest MMO? How about taking a look and seeing what MMOs may have, left us a little too soon? You can leave your angry comments on that video too about the games that I left off. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again next week.